For God did not give us a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear, but He has given us a spirit of power, of love, and of sound judgment. Fear is a strategy of spiritual warfare. We are destroying every sophisticated argument and every exalted and proud thing. Whatever it is that we meditate on invites the presence of what we are worshipping. Meditation is worship. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Hazel Nima and you are in the 2 or 3 pod where God is in our midst. If you're new here, this is a place of fellowship where we talk about our vulnerabilities. We talk about modern day struggles and topics. We try and answer questions that we think on in our day-to-day lives. And we do all of this with the God-given word. Stick around because today we are going to talk about fear. Something that even I struggle with, something that I'm sure at one point of your life, or even right now, you struggle with, something that can lead to anxiety if not controlled, and something that can actually attract the irrational scenarios that we tend to make up in our minds. So let's jump right at it. We'll start with the book of Job, chapter 3, and verse 25. And in this passage, Job is telling us, "For the thing which I greatly fear comes upon me, and that of which I am afraid has come upon me." When I read this, as I'm doing this study, actually, as I'm reading this, it's the first time I'm getting to see this passage in 2 ways. Because I just used to think that he's repeating the same statement. But now that I'm reading it, I recognize that there are 2 tenses here. The first statement he's saying, "For the thing which I greatly fear comes upon me," meaning it's in the present, and which I greatly fear implies that he is still fearing it. It's present continuous. The second statement says, "And that of which I am afraid has come upon me," meaning that what he's afraid of has now come upon him, which is what? I forgot the tense. Present participle. It means that it's already happened in the not so distant past. But why are we starting by talking about Job? I believe that even up until chapter 3 rather, we can learn so much about his life and how fear shaped the outcomes that came upon him. Now, for context, in verse 1 and 2, chapter 1 and 2, God and Satan are having a conversation. And Satan says that I have just been roaming on the earth here and there. And then God is saying, "Have you considered my servant Job?" He's saying that this is someone who's so upright. He's righteous. He sticks to my word. He worships and serves me in truth. Satan is like, of course he does all that because you've put a hedge of protection around him. Why wouldn't he worship you? Why wouldn't he praise you? His life is perfect. And then God says, okay, then do what you want with him. Just don't touch his life. Don't kill him. Most people don't even understand why God would do that, me included. Because if someone is righteous and he's doing all the right things, it should warranty a good life, right? In the eyes of God, at least. But then, as I was listening to this other podcast, Unashamed Rome 116 by Elena, she was doing a whole Bible study on the book of Job. If you're actually interested in the nitty-gritties of Job's life and the whole book of Job, you could actually go and listen to her. She's done a whole Bible study. But back to what we're talking about. After God and Satan spoke, now Job is faced with so many issues, just crazy things that you wouldn't even imagine can happen to just one person, especially all at the same time. His cattle die. Herds and herds, animals, thousands. I think it was like 7,000 sheep, like thousands of animals are dying. Then the servants who are in charge of those animals are dying. His children, all 7 sons and 3 daughters, they all die at once. TCG thunder struck a tree. Then the tree fell on the house and all of them, thunder struck the house. Like something just so crazy. And then his wife is just like, just curse God. What's wrong with you? Curse God and die. Look at what's happening. Job is like, you foolish woman. Why is it that we praise him when things are going good, but now when he gives you a bit of trials and tribulations, you want to curse him? And so you see, what God said about Job was still true, that even if he took away all that he had, he would still worship him. So God and Satan have another conversation. And Satan is like, of course he's still worshiping you because he's in good and perfect health. Then God's saying, okay, do whatever you want to do with him, Basi, but don't kill him. And so now the second strike of issues come upon Job. And this one is this painful and disgusting sores all over his body. And now Job is rolling in ashes. And I think that was his breaking point because he starts complaining. He's like, why am I facing this? I'm in pain day and night. I'm in pain when I wake up. I can't even wait to wake up. I can't wait for morning to come because I'm just in pain the whole night. All of that. But the thing is, if you look at everything that has happened to him, right from the beginning where his cattle dies, to this point where he's rolling in ashes because his body is in pain, who in their right mind can say, all these things I had once feared, I had thought about, and I really was afraid of them happening, but now they are happening? Who in their rational human mind actually gets time to sit down and think of all this happening in their lives all at once? It's not possible. It's not rational. We don't sit down and think of all these crazy things. And that's why I want to point us to the fact that these weren't his thoughts. These thoughts were planted. So what we're learning from Job is that fear is a strategy of spiritual warfare. Are you getting that? Like Job was thinking of these scenarios that were so crazy. If you were to even meditate on them, it's a 1 in a million chance of ever happening to someone. 1 in a billion even. All at once, especially. Even just for the children in themselves. Just that one scenario of the children dying. How can 10 children die at the same time? Because they were in the same place at the right time. How? It's such an impossible scenario to ever happen. And it's not a rational thing that people just sit and think about. So these aren't just thoughts that Job was having on a random Tuesday. These were things that were planted in his subconscious without him even knowing. So even when God was telling Satan, okay, you have authority to do with Job what you want, I believe Satan didn't even have to start from scratch because the things that he had already planted in Job's mind, Job had almost ruminated on them enough for him to actually act on them. Fear is so irrational. And the moment that you can actually spot how irrational they are is the moment you begin to understand and to expose who planted them. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. When I was reading this from the Amplified Version, I got to see this in a whole different light. The verse just got better because it's a verse that I always quote. I'm always quoting because, as I said, I struggle with fear at times. And it's saying that, for God did not give us a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear, but He has given us a spirit of power, of love, and of sound judgment and personal discipline. In brackets, to what I saw was added is abilities that result in a calm, well-balanced mind and self-control. A well-balanced mind means that you are rational in your thoughts. It's calm. Your mind is calm. It's at peace. And it's saying that God did not give us a spirit of fear. So if God did not give it to us, then who gave it to us? The devil. And that's exactly what plagued Job. All these irrational fears were brought to him by the devil, because that's where spiritual warfare will begin. It won't just start from the physical. You don't just wake up one day and somehow your life has overturned. It started somewhere. And as Christians, we say that life is spiritual, meaning that anything that you see in the physical realm already happened in the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm is led by your thoughts. Oh my days. Thoughts travel in the spiritual. If you're not convinced, let's get into the science of it, right? As we sleep, our bodies are hibernating. Sometimes people even say that we are half dead because our brain capacity reduces significantly. Our heart rate reduces significantly. If you were to take someone sleeping and study their brain activity and study their heart rates, and then and see those statistics in someone who's alive and active, you'd probably tell this person you're about to die soon. Like something is wrong with you. Because when we're asleep, all activities in our bodies, some even stop, and some are just slowed down to the point where they're almost non-existence, something like digestion. That's why we're told that we shouldn't eat before we sleep, because that food won't get digested in the way that it's supposed to be. But get this, even though our bodies are sleeping, our minds and our hearts are sleeping, quote unquote, our spirits never sleep. And that's why when you get dreams, you get to see that a lot of them are actually spiritual. But you still get these dreams which cling on to what you were doing during the day, what you saw during the day, who you were talking to, the people you know in your life. Because some dreams, though spiritual, they cling onto your thoughts. They cling onto what your brain and your mind was processing before you went to sleep. That's also why we are told that you should be very careful what you're watching, what you're talking about, what you're reading right before you sleep. Because those thoughts will now get processed in your dreams and your spirit man will pick up on them. So, what am I trying to say? Thoughts travel in the spiritual realm. Now you can even get attacks that resemble themes in your physical realm. And that's why they even say that if you go to a shrink, or those people who can tell you, oh, I can connect you with your dead relative. Yes, you will talk to a face that looks like your grandmother, but that is a demon that has clung onto your thoughts and given you a face that you remember. Hey, I don't know if I'm scaring you. I don't know if I'm making sense. But our thoughts are very significant in the spiritual realm. And if we're not careful to what we think on, what we meditate on, a lot of attacks can actually stem from our thoughts. And that's what's happening with Job. He wasn't careful of what thoughts he was getting. And we're even seeing him telling us that what I was afraid of has now come upon me. Those thoughts traveled to the spiritual realm, which now manifested in the physical. But God is telling us He did not give us this spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of love, of power, and of sound judgment. So we see that Job's fears were not of sound judgment, they were not rational. And that's why we're saying that fear is a strategy of spiritual warfare. Because when we fear, our capacity to love has already been affected. Our capacity to have power and to walk in that power has already been reduced. So we are weak and we are susceptible to these attacks. And our capacity to think in sound judgment has been impeded. And that's how the strategy begins. So, what does fear do? We want to really break this down and actually see how fear manifests and how we can solve these issues. So, I liken this to an actual war. When an enemy wants to take over a certain territory, where does he start? From the defense, right? You can't really overturn someone who looks like they're more powerful than you. So you start eating away at their defense. You start eating away at what makes them stronger than you so that you can now attack. And so, in the spiritual realm, in what we're talking about now about fear, what fear does is it starts weakening your defense. And where is our defense? It's in God. It's in our trust, in our dependency on the one who is stronger than the enemy. Because on our own, we already said that we cannot make it. On our own, the enemy has power over us for sure because he knows more than us. He was there from the beginning of time. So our strength is in God. And that's now the link that he begins to weaken with fear. We can even see this from the story of the children of Israel. At every point of their journey in the wilderness, they are always complaining. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? Now we are going to die here. Why have you brought us from a place which was full of food? Now this wilderness is dry land. There are no trees. There are no streams. We're going to die here. All these complaints. And even when Moses is now going up on the mountain, they make a golden image of a calf because they want something to worship. And it just shows us that fear in their head that they had been abandoned, the fear that they were going to die there, the fear that now they don't know what to do, they were alone, it made them act in this irrational way. It made them forget about the person who had once brought them through, literally through the Red Sea. Made them forget about the person who took them out of captivity. What fear does, it makes you forget about where your power lies. An example I can give, which even talks about my own experience with fear, is always thinking that you need to have everything figured out. And even for adults, I think it's even worse. You have kids, you don't have a stable job, you have all these bills to pay. And you're just thinking, how will you manage all of this? And this fear that one day you won't be able to do it all now turns into anxiety and it's crippling you. You almost feel like you cannot make it. And all these other thoughts now come to you. I need to have this figured out. I need to have this figured out. You have no peace of mind. You just keep on spiraling and spiraling. And that's when people even fall into these wrong sources of income. Fear can make us do some crazy things. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. We should trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all of our hearts and do not rely on your own insight or understanding. In this context, if your understanding and your insight is based on that spirit of fear, then definitely your understanding is already limited and it has limited you. It's limited. The moment you buckle under fear, fearful thoughts, you're already making yourself a potential candidate for attack. Because you need to recognize that fear and fear mongering is all around all of us. It's all around everyone. So why should you be the one to take it seriously? If I may just put it like that, why should you be the one to now say that, hey, enyewe, I can get sick. Enyewe, I need to be careful. When you start relying on your own insight and understanding, fear can pull you out of that trust and dependency on God. Your confidence in God starts to shake because you've let those thoughts of fear take over you. And now it's no longer about taking it to God and trusting Him with it and trusting Him with the situation. But now you're acting on those impulses. You're acting based off of your own insights, which has been heavily influenced by fear. Now you start acting in ways that you weren't before. You start doing things that you weren't before because you want to be, quote unquote, careful. You want to be cautious. You want to prevent a disaster that God never even intended for it to happen to you. You need to trust in your defense because once you step away from your defense, once you detach, you need to recognize that now the devil has you right where he wanted you in the first place when he was planting those thoughts. He wants you alone and secluded. He wants you relying on your own insight, on your own understanding. He wants you relying on your own strength. And now you start having all these elaborate plans. Oh, next year I'm going to do this. These are my New Year resolutions because I don't want this year to be like last year, because I don't want to fall into debt. And now you make all these plans around your fear. Plans, plans that aren't even supposed to take root in your life. God never intended for any of those fears to come upon you, but now your whole life is now centered around them. We cannot let fear weaken our defense in God. Number two, the way that strategy turns into spiritual warfare, it leads to anxiety, which leads to a lack of peace. Now, this is a point where I want to just make clear the difference between fear and anxiety. Fear, based on Google, fear is a response to a perceived threat, and it usually plays on our senses. So, fear stems from a physical point of view. For example, if you have like a survivor, I hate to use this example, but I believe that it will really bring out that aspect of fear and anxiety. If someone is caught in between a terrorist attack, for example, at a public place, mall, maybe, and then he's just going about his business, he or she, and they hear the gunshots for the first time. Based on what you know a gunshot is, of course, your mind already knows that, who has been shot? So your ears have perceived a threat that your mind has picked up on. The second thing this person can get in that situation is seeing the terrorist, seeing someone who's masked, seeing the weapon they're carrying. And so their eyes have perceived another threat. And that is what can cause fear in this person, which is very rational, right? But now here is where the difference starts coming in. Your response. Immediately our minds perceive these threats. We either go into a flight, a fight, or a freeze response. So for this person who's caught up in the terrorist attack, they can run and hide, or they can freeze and be caught because their body is not catching up to what is being seen. So they're frozen. And that's now the rational side of fear. But now, clinging on to this same example, right? This person one day, let's say they survived. Thank God they survived. One day, this person hears a clap of thunder which resembles the sound of a gunshot. Their mind immediately takes them to that experience, which has nothing to do with this current experience. That's anxiety now. According to Google, it's worrying about a threat that has not or may not even happen. And it also clings onto our emotional senses. It's no longer physical. So anxiety clings onto the intangible part of us, our subconscious, our thoughts and our emotions. That's anxiety now. It likens a current situation to something that once happened before. It keeps us in this defense mode. For this person now, when they hear the clap of thunder, they'll probably act in the same way that they did when they first heard that gunshot, because their mind has taken them back to a situation where this first happened. That's how now fear starts becoming anxiety. Your mind makes you repeat this same thing, this same perceived threat, even in situations that are not the same as this first threat. In my life, I can liken this to public speaking. Such a crazy thing that happened. I was told to read in front of people something, a whole pamphlet, one whole. It was long. It was just long. And the thing that made me fear is the fact that the person told me to present this just 5 minutes before I was going up there. I was just chilling, man. I had no intention of talking in front of anyone. My mind was not in it. And so that just put me in a panic mode. So when I go up there and I read, it went horribly, to say, just to cut the long story, it went very bad. It was embarrassing. At least I finished reading, but it was awful. And so of course now my mind has already perceived that as an embarrassing experience. And now my first experience of public speaking, okay, it wasn't my first, it wasn't really my first, but of reading something in front of people, that first experience has already put in me something that's now started boiling down to anxiety. Because every other subsequent time where I was told to read or to present in front of people, my mind took me back to that time. And it's telling me this is potential for embarrassment. This is potential for something bad really happening. This is potential for you doing really awfully and being very vulnerable in front of people. And so it impeded my ability to do better. It impeded my ability to do it again, even though this time is so different from last time, because at least this time I'm prepared. This time I know I'm going to present this time, but still the anxiety is taking over. And that's what we're saying here. Fear leads to anxiety, which leads to a lack of peace. Spiritually, what the devil is trying to do is to distract you with the unrealistic event, with this unrealistic thought, with this unrealistic premonition. And once you're distracted, once you've constantly kept your mind on it, once every time you're in a situation which intends you to act, you now start thinking of before. You start thinking of what happened last time. You're distracted. And now, this time will be exactly the same. That's what happens. And it will keep you in this constant state of lack of peace. You will never have peace of mind. At least that's my experience with it. You will never have peace of mind. Because even when you're not presenting, in my example, even if I'm not presenting, I'm just thinking, what if they call me to present? It's annoying, actually. If anyone has a solution for this, I'm more than willing to take up on it. It's annoying. It's frustrating, to say the least. You're just angry that this is now how you have to live because you let that fear ruminate. Anyway, Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. It says that you will keep in perfect and constant peace the one whose mind is steadfast. In bracket, it's saying committed and focused on you in both inclination and character. And then it continues to say, because he trusts and takes refuge in you with hope and confident expectations. This verse actually hits home for me because I applied it at a time in my life when I felt like the peace I was getting from a situation was just temporary. And if something was to go wrong, I would immediately know that I made the wrong decision. And I read this and I was like, you will keep in perfect and constant peace. I should be in perfect and constant peace, even when circumstances don't look like they're, they're favorable. But I'm in constant and perfect peace because I am walking in God's purpose. I'm walking in God's plan. And in that situation, I just knew that I was in so much anxiety because I was like, I hope nothing wrong I hope nothing bad happens, because immediately my peace will be gone. And so for what we are talking about, if this fear leads to anxiety and leads to a lack of peace, then we need to be conscious on keeping our mind on God, because God will keep us in perfect and constant peace. That mind that is focused on Him, He will keep in peace. That mind that is focused on pleasing Him, focused on walking in His commandments, focused on replicating the character that Jesus showed us as He was on earth. That's the mind that He'll keep in perfect peace. And everywhere that God is, fear and anxiety cannot exist, as we had read in 2 Timothy. Like, He did not give us a spirit of fear. So if you're keeping your mind on Him, as should I, if you're keeping your mind on Him, fear and anxiety will not exist in that area. It will not exist in your mind in that aspect. And I really do try to do this. Do I? I will. I will do this from now on. And number 3, how does this strategy help the enemy in his spiritual warfare against you? We need to recognize that whatever it is that we meditate on invites the presence of what we are worshiping. Meditation is worship. And we even read this from the Bible in Joshua chapter 1 verse 8, where we are being told that this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate. You shall read and meditate on it day and night. Day and night, meaning that it is always in your mind. You're meditating on it. You're going over it again and again. You're in a situation, and the instant response to something is whatever is said in the book of the law, because you have meditated on it day and night. And from John chapter 1 verse 1, we get to see that in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So when you keep the book of the law, the Word of God, in your heart and you're meditating on it, it's in your mind and you're meditating on it day and night, what you're doing is worshiping God. Because that word is God Himself. When you meditate on the words of God, then you're keeping your mind on God, right? And so meditation invites the presence of what you worship. The more you meditate on the word of God, the more you're inviting the presence of God in your life. So now, if we meditate on fear, what happens? If you meditate on these thoughts, unrealistic scenarios, what happens? You're inviting the presence of what you're worshiping. And that's exactly how we attract what we fear. As you meditate continuously on fearful thoughts, you meditate on thoughts of death, you meditate on thoughts of harm, on thoughts of sickness and injury, on thoughts of failing in front of people as you present. That is what you invite into your life. It's a gateway. It's an open gateway. We need to recognize that physical battles, are won and lost in the mind. So whatever it is that you keep on meditating on, and that's now the final finishing strategy of spiritual warfare. The moment you're continuously meditating, it's already happened. It's already happened. You need to recognize that the devil is battling with us in our minds. It's not even physical anymore. It never was physical. Once the battle is lost in your mind, it's done for you. It's finished. And sometimes the scariest thing is, all this happens without us being conscious of it. All this happens. We lose battles without even knowing we were in a battle, because we were not conscious of the thoughts that were going in our minds, that were running day and night, things that we were meditating on. Just like I had been meditating on that fear, I was not conscious of the fact that that one bad experience has now been repeated over and over, because I kept thinking about it. I kept meditating on it. And that one bad thing had been, I'm not claiming it, please, had been a part of my life because I kept meditating on it. We need to stop inviting the presence of fear. We need to stop this. We need to stop meditating on fearful thoughts and realistic things. Because what that says? It says that this fear is bigger than your defense. It's saying that this fear is bigger than your God. If you're meditating on the fear more than you're meditating on what God has said, then you're revering the fear more than God. Then this fear has taken over your fear of God. We need to check on what you're meditating on. The Bible in Philippians chapter 4 verse 8 just says that whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is right and confirmed by God's word, underline that, confirmed by God's word. God did not give us a spirit of fear. Whatever is pure and wholesome, whatever is lovely and brings peace, whatever is admirable and of good reputation, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, worthy of celebration, worthy of joyous shouts, you know what? Whatever is worthy of praise, think continuously on these things. In bracket, it's saying, center your mind on them and implant them in your heart. God knew and is now giving us a solution. He's saying, whatever it is that you've been thinking about that is causing you to worry, it is causing you sorrow and hurt. It's bringing you this pain that hasn't even happened yet. It's making you cry over outcomes that haven't happened yet. Stop thinking of those things. Stop meditating on those things. Think about what is true, what I have confirmed in my word. Think about what is lovely, what brings you peace. Think happy thoughts. Long story short, think happy thoughts, think joyous thoughts, think true thoughts, pure thoughts. That's actually now the breaking point because something can make you happy, but it's not pure and it's not confirmed by God's word. So let's not get it confused here. No? Let's not get it twisted. Think what is pure. Think what is worthy of respect. Think what is honorable. Center your mind on these things. So we get to realize that our thoughts are actually things that can be controlled. They shouldn't control us. It's not the other way around. We are in total control of our flesh, our bodies, our minds, and our heart. It's very easy for negative, fearful thoughts to be implanted there. And we need to fight this. We need to fight this. And something that I usually use every time that I am plagued by negative thoughts or fearful thoughts, just unrealistic things, is a verse that says, sorry, let me just look for it. Is in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. Very powerful. It says, we are destroying every sophisticated argument and every exalted and proud thing that sets itself up against the true knowledge of God. And this is now the part about the thoughts. We are taking every thought, every purpose captive to the obedience of Christ. And every time I'm plagued with these thoughts, I just keep on saying, I'm taking these thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. Actually, after the first time, it already works. If you know the power that is in Jesus Christ, you wouldn't have to call his name 10 times. That's what I realized. If you already know the power in his name, one time is enough. Once is enough. It's not a chance. This is not something that you're doing to see if it will work. You're doing it in faith. You're taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, and just like that, they're gone. You need to do it in faith. You're not supposed to repeat it 10 times. If you are, then the faith is lacking. Because the Bible says we are destroying every exalted and proud thing that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We know that God is not a God who implants fear into us. So every single argument that is exalting itself up against that knowledge, we are destroying it in faith. We're not trying to see if it will work. We're not trying to see if God is bigger than that fear. He is. In faith, we're taking those thoughts captive. It will work. That's the mentality you need to have getting into this. So please, act on your faith. Hey. So as you can see, fear. Fear is a proper strategy. You can see how battles are won in the mind, how what we fear can manifest just because you are not conscious of our thoughts. Now that we've talked about the whole three-point strategy, the whole armory, everything, how do we prevent fear from taking over? Number one, talk about it, expose it, and break it down. What do I mean by this? Talk about it to someone, even if it's not God, just to someone you trust. Talk about what you fear. And don't confuse this with the power of the tongue. You're not saying it in a way that you're claiming it. No, you're saying it because you want to expose just how irrational it sounds. When you talk about it, sometimes you might even stop halfway and be like, wait, that doesn't even look like it can happen. You know, sometimes our thoughts are very irrational, but they seem possible in our mind. You know how you say, I believe I can fly. It's possible in your mind. A lot of things are possible in our mind. But once we voice them out, you get to see how irrational they are. And that's why even in the course I'm in, architecture, you need to actually voice out your concepts and your designs to people, because in your mind it might seem possible to do. When you talk about it, it's when people start asking you, okay, so how will this and this work? How is this? Talking about it can bring another rational brain into this fear of yours. And then people can now get to tell you, this does not even sound possible. Calm down. Stop thinking about that. That won't happen if they're good people. So choose wisely. People who will encourage you, people who will tell you to calm down, people will tell you, take it to God. I'll pray with you on this. You will defeat this fear. And for me, that person has been my mom through and through. She was actually the one who broke down Second Timothy for me. And she told me that I sense fear in you. I don't know why you're fearful. God has brought you so far. Why would you fear that now is when you'd start failing? Because that's what it was for me. And then she just told me that God has given us love, power, and sound mind. And so as you're fearing, your sound mind is being impeded, Nima. You need to calm down. And we just pray together. And she kept praying for me. So those are the people you should go to, please. Don't start going to friends who actually have some crazy agendas behind the scenes, people who don't actually mean you well. Because trust me, they will heighten. You know what heightening is? They will heighten that fear. You'll be properly anxious. So choose wisely. Talk about it so that it can be exposed and broken down. Number two, we said that battles are won and lost in the mind. But a very effective way to win your battles is by your words. And I'll give the example of praying. I don't know how many of you pray in your heart. Like ile yenye, you're not necessarily doing it out loud. You're not even mouthing it, even if it doesn't have sound. You're not mouthing it. So you're in this very distracted environment, and then you're trying to pray in your mind, basically. After a while, you get distracted. Either someone talks to you, and then you start praying something that they've said, ama lyrics come into your head, and then your train of thought is disrupted rather. You just get to see that all these battling thoughts, the only way that one can be dominant over another is what you choose to now say. That's one of the most effective ways to battle thoughts in your mind. Whatever you end up saying is now what will become more dominant. What you end up saying is the power that becomes more dominant now. So if you have all these fearful thoughts, speak the truth, speak the words of God, speak the teachings of Jesus. Start speaking what you know is true. In your heart of hearts, what you actually know is true, what you know is worthy of praise, what you know is worthy of respect. Now speak those things. Because actually, in the midst of those battling thoughts, there'll always be that silent thought that's telling you, no, you're actually enough. No, you'll actually do this. You'll actually make it. But what you end up speaking is what will now take its course. Words are very powerful in that way. So be very conscious. Be very, very conscious of what you end up actually saying at the end of it. And number three way of preventing this fear from taking over, check your inputs, check your sources, check what feeds you day in and day out. And the easiest way that we get our news and our information, the fastest way and the most efficient way, is through media, whether it's social media or mainstream media. Check that input, because especially mainstream media, it's almost wired to give us bad news. Only 1 out of 4 times, 1 out of 5 times will the news actually be of something prosperous, something successful. Oh, someone has started this venture in Kenya. It's doing well. Very rarely is the news actually encouraging. So there is this thing that takes root, fear mongering. Fear mongering. One day it's just, oh, this person was stabbed. Oh, this femicide is getting worse in Kenya. Oh, protests, someone was shot. There's always some form of fear mongering that makes us believe that this world is worse, that our country is worse than it actually is. It may be true that those things are happening, but do you know how much more good is also happening? We can actually pull, it's crazy, you can actually pull that fear and make it work in our own life. we can attract that fear and make it work in our own life. Let's use the example of robbery with violence. The news keeps saying how in town these robberies have increased. People are being stabbed even after you've already given your items. Now, for you, who has watched all that, consumed all that news, you start carrying a weapon for self-defense. Imagine that. You start carrying a weapon. What you don't realize you've done is you've made this intangible fear, something that you've never even heard of in real life. None of your friends have been mugged, none of your family. You've not even seen a thug face to face ever in your life. But then you start carrying weapons because you've heard that there's violence, that there's robbery with violence, and you're like, me, I'm prepared. Wanikujie. What you don't realize is just by you carrying that self-defense weapon, thinking that you are trying to be cautious and to have a method of surviving in such a scenario, what you've done is you've made your fear tangible by introducing a physical item to prevent an intangible fear. You get what I mean? It was never in God's plan for you to be mugged. You are never to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Never. But now you have carried a weapon to make that fear tangible. And so the way that you've already prepared yourself to fight, they will come for you. You need to stop buckling under fear. It sounds almost ideal, I know, and it sounds a bit ridiculous. But once you make your fear tangible, something that was subconscious, something that only existed in your mind, only existed somewhere in the media, somewhere in this world, you claimed it for yourself. And now you're even acting in ways to prevent something that hasn't happened. You've already invited that thing to happen. That's what we mean. You've attracted it because you've made an intangible fear a tangible action. You've made it a preventive measure. People are always like, oh, why do bad things happen to good people? But you need to realize that before something bad happens to you, either God gave it authority to happen, like in the story of Job, and it can only happen within a certain limits. You see how God said, don't touch his life. You're not killing my person. You're not killing my child. Don't touch his life. God authorizes it within boundaries. Or you give it access to happen. So for this example, as you carry your self-defense weapon, you've already given access for something to happen that God did not intend for it to happen. And then now people start asking, why do good things happen to bad people? You gave it access because your actions were now in alignment with your fear. You aligned your action with your fear. We need to be very careful of how we respond to these fearful thoughts. This is how we attract them. With our words, with our actions, we make it a tangible thing. We make it a very real thing in our lives. Stop buckling under fear. You're making yourself a potential candidate. I'm talking to myself too. I pray for grace. I pray for grace to actually apply all of this. Because yes, it is way harder than how we are putting it right now. It sounds simple because it is simple, but it's very hard to apply at times. But we must prevail. Come on, we must prevail. And I actually wanted to talk about my own experience as we're closing, because we're done with the points. I wanted to talk about my own experience with fear and how fear can actually paralyze you. And I mean paralyze in the literal sense, like you cannot move. I talked about spiritual attacks when I was starting this episode. I talked about how they can manifest based on your thoughts. And I'm still not sure what thoughts this clung onto for me. But there was a time when I was sleeping, not even a time, but a series of times, probably 2 or 3 times this has happened. I was sleeping, not even in my bed, like ile tu unajilaza tu, just a bit, because you're tired. Umejiwekelea tu kwa meza. Out of nowhere, my heart starts racing. My heart starts racing like crazy. You'd think I'm doing 100 meters. You'd think I'm preparing for sprints. You'd think I'm on the track field. My heart is racing. And in my dream, I'm panting. I'm trying to grasp for air. It's not coming. And the worst part about this is whatever was happening in my dream was happening to me in the physical realm. And this is why I'm saying that thoughts travel in the spiritual. Those thoughts were in my spirit, man, woman, girl. They started manifesting in the physical. Everything that was happening in my dream was happening in real life. And you know, the worst part is it paralyzed me so much so that I know that I need air. I need to sit up. I need to start gasping for air. I need water. I need help. I cannot move. I cannot even open my mouth to scream for help. At that point, I was like, Appa, none of my family is going to help me. I didn't even try at, oh, mom, no. I was like, Jesus, it's not coming out. I was opening my mouth. No word is coming out in the physical realm. It was scary, to say the least. And I believe that's what fear feels like. I felt it firsthand. It's not something that I even want to play about anymore. We are taking these thoughts captive, guys. We're not playing with it anymore. Don't let it get to that point. I've struggled with it a lot. For that to happen twice or thrice, to the point where when it happens again, I know it's going to happen. There's actually a time I got the strength to call out Jesus, but in my dreams, it did not come out in real life, and it stopped. So we're taking these thoughts captive because not doing anything is doing something. Let me say that again. Not doing anything is doing something. In physics, we don't have negative magnitude. You can't have negative time. You can't have negative speed. Even if something is causing a deceleration, it is doing something. And so you not doing anything is working either for your good or for your detriment. And most of the time, it's the latter. So do not let those thoughts continue. Just because you're not doing anything does not mean that they cannot grow. You need to fight back. Because I believe that I did not do anything about it. I knew that at some random point of the day, I would think about me on a stage again and I'd get fearful over nothing. I knew, and it grew. So do something about it. I'm still trying to do something about it. Please, as I said, if you have tips, I am ready to listen. And I'm going to leave you guys with an assignment. Go and reflect on what is the root cause of your fears and anxiety. Before you start telling people, I'm just an anxious person. Oh, that thing is really flaring up my anxiety. We're making it a trend. Crazy. It's not something to be proud of. It's not. This is an attack. Oh, my ADHD mind is just running all around it. Please. There are people who actually suffer from those things chronically. But do not label things which you can fight against. Do not label things which came upon you as attacks, and now you have made them a part of your identity. Go and find out the root cause of your fear and of your anxiety. You are not born like that. You were not born like that. It happened at some point. And please, I'm not talking about the people who are chronically ill with some of these things. If you have fears and anxieties that cripple you day in and day out, go and find the root cause of it. Pray on it. Apply some of the things we've talked about today. Find those scriptures that you can quote in the event that the thoughts get a bit too much. Then believe that we'll overcome. Come on. You cannot plant good seed and still produce bad fruits. Remember that. The results will match your efforts. So let's keep pushing, guys. We can do this. We can make it. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening if you've made it this far. And feel free to share this with a friend. Feel free. Please feel free. Free yourself. Share this with someone who actually needs it. Someone who you know is very anxious. Someone who you know struggles with this. Don't be selfish. Let's uplift each other. And you have yourself a good day. A blessed and amazing, amazing day or night, depending on when you're listening to this. I hope to talk to you again next time. Bye.